Warren Buffett will tell you that compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. And yet the single habit that did more to make him the greatest investor alive wasn't picking stocks. It was reading 500 pages every single day. That tells you something important right from the start. The most powerful compounding force in your life isn't in your brokerage account. It's in your behavior, running quietly every ordinary morning, whether you're watching it or not. Welcome to Money, the channel where we dig into the real mechanics behind wealth, success, and the choices that separate people who build remarkable lives from people who stay stuck wondering what went wrong. If you're new here, hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell. We drop new videos every week, and this is exactly the kind of content I don't want you to discover years too late. So here's what we're getting into today. Compound interest is one of the most celebrated ideas in all of finance, and for genuinely good reason. Money growing on money, multiplying silently over decades, turning modest early investments into figures that seem almost impossible when you first see them. If you put $5,000 into a broad index fund at 20 years old and simply left it alone, at historical average market returns you'd have over $200,000 by 60. Not because you did something remarkable, because you waited and let the math do the work. It's powerful, it's real, and you should absolutely take advantage of it. But here's what the financial textbooks never taught you. Your behaviors run on the exact same engine. Every habit you practice is earning interest. Every habit you ignore is losing it. And the gap between who you are today and who you could be in 10 years isn't going to be determined by your portfolio allocation. It's going to be determined by what you do every single ordinary day, the mundane, repeated, barely noticed choices that most of us don't even register as decisions. Let's start with the numbers, because once you see them, you genuinely can't unsee them. James Clear, in his book Atomic Habits, laid out a calculation I still think about constantly. If you get just 1% better at something every single day for a year, you end up 37 times better by the end of it. Not 37% better. 37 times better. The math seems almost absurd until you check it and realize it's just arithmetic. Now flip it. If you get 1% worse every day, a little lazier, a little more distracted, a little more willing to let the important things slide, you don't decline by 37%. You decay towards zero. Small, consistent improvements don't add up. They multiply. Small, consistent declines do exactly the same. Two people can start from nearly identical positions in life and end up in completely different universes 20 years later, not because of one dramatic turning point choice, but because of the invisible math running silently beneath all their small daily ones. Here's what makes this feel so counterintuitive, though. The returns are invisible for a very long time. When you invest money at 25, you don't feel wealthy next month. The compounding works quietly in the background, and the results don't get dramatic until much later. Habits are identical. If you start exercising every morning, after 1 week you don't look different. After a month, the change is subtle at best. After a year, though, you've transformed not just your body, but your energy levels, your mental clarity, your discipline, and your relationship with discomfort itself. The problem is that in week 3, when you're tired and the alarm goes off at 6 in the morning, none of that future version of you is visible yet. The human brain is fundamentally wired to respond to immediate feedback. We feel the cost of a habit instantly, the effort, the time, the friction. We feel the reward much, much later. And that gap between cost and reward is where most habits go to die. There's a concept in behavioral science called the plateau of latent potential. It describes that deeply frustrating stretch, and almost everyone who has ever tried to build a meaningful habit has lived it, where you're putting in the work, staying consistent, and nothing visible seems to be changing. You go to the gym for 6 weeks, and the mirror still isn't lying in your favor. You meditate every morning for 2 months, and you still feel anxious sometimes. You practice a new language for 3 months, and you still can't hold a real conversation. This is the moment most people quit. They look at the input and the output, decide the numbers don't add up, and conclude that this particular thing just doesn't work for them. But what's actually happening is that the compounding has been accumulating beneath the surface, like water slowly filling a reservoir that hasn't yet overflowed. Think about an ice cube sitting on a table in a cold room. The temperature rises from 25 degrees to 26, 27, 28. Nothing changes. 30. 31. Still completely solid. Then it hits 32, and the whole thing starts to melt. Was nothing happening at 28 degrees? No, heat was accumulating the entire time. The visible change just required crossing a threshold. Consistent habits work exactly like that. They build beneath the threshold of visibility, and then one day, they cross it. The people who quit almost always do so just before that crossing point, and they walk away convinced that it was the habit that failed them, when really it was the timeline. What makes compound habits even more fascinating than compound interest is that the right habits don't just compound on themselves. They trigger other habits. In finance, money compounds in one direction. More money makes more money. But certain behaviors, what researchers call keystone habits, set off chain reactions across multiple areas of your life simultaneously. Exercise is the classic example. Studies consistently find that people who establish a regular exercise routine don't just get fitter. They start sleeping better, eating better, drinking less, and performing more productively at work. Nobody told them to make those changes. The exercise habit reorganized their identity and their daily structure, and the benefits radiated outward on their own. One good habit silently compounding into 5. This brings us to what I think is the deepest layer of this whole idea, and the one that most productivity advice misses completely. When you invest money, you're building a portfolio. When you build habits, you're building a self. Every time you sit down to write, when you don't feel like it, you cast a small vote for the identity of someone who is a writer. Every time you run when you'd rather stay in bed, you cast a vote for being someone who follows through on what they commit to. Every time you choose the harder, slower, better option, the real food, the early night, the honest conversation you've been avoiding, you're placing an identity vote. No single vote decides an election, but thousands of them, cast consistently over months and years, absolutely do. And the identity that grows from that process is far more durable than any motivational burst you've ever generated from a video or a great conversation. Because eventually you're not fighting yourself to do the habit anymore. You're just acting like who you are. The habit stops costing you willpower because the person doing it has changed. Now, all of this works in both directions, and we have to be clear-eyed about that. Bad habits compound just as efficiently as good ones. The person who has a couple of extra drinks every night doesn't wake up with a visible problem in week 1. The person who scrolls their phone for 2 hours before bed doesn't notice their attention span shrinking in real time. The person who lets friendships drift without tending to them doesn't feel the loneliness building until it's already become its own serious problem. We judge habits by how they feel in the moment, pleasurable or uncomfortable, rather than by where they are mathematically taking us over years. Financial advisors illustrate the danger of this with fees. A 2% annual management fee sounds like almost nothing. But over 40 years, that 2% quietly erodes hundreds of thousands of dollars that would otherwise have been compounding in your favor. Tiny differences in rate, maintained over time, create enormous differences in outcome, and the same relentless equation is running on every habit you are currently tolerating. So what does all of this actually mean for how you live day to day? It means the question worth asking isn't whether a habit will change your life today. The compounding question is, if I did this consistently for the next 10 years, who would I become? The people we genuinely admire, the ones who seem to have read everything, who move through the world with unusual clarity and physical vitality and emotional steadiness. Almost none of them got there through some dramatic transformation. They got there through patient, consistent behavior, compounded quietly over years. They're not exceptional people. They're patient ones. And patience, it turns out, is simply the willingness to let compounding run long enough to become visible. The financial world is obsessed with starting early because of compounding, and rightly so. The same urgency applies to habits. The best time to start was 10 years ago. The second best time is today, not Monday, not after the next big project wraps up, not when life finally settles down. Because life doesn't settle down. And every day you wait isn't a neutral day. It's a day that a slightly different version of you is quietly compounding in a direction you didn't consciously choose. So here's what I want to leave you with. What habit have you been putting off that you know deep down would change everything if you gave it enough time and consistency to compound? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one and I genuinely want to know what you're building. If this gave you something useful, hit the like button. It helps this channel reach people who need it. And if you want to keep following this thread, next time we're getting into why people self-sabotage right at the edge of a breakthrough. Because that moment of quitting is more predictable and more avoidable than most people realize. I'll see you then.